She was the daughter of a millionaire, born into wealth, privilege, and everything money could buy. But one summer afternoon, all of it nearly slipped away in an instant. Alone by the pool, her life hung by a fragile thread as the water pulled her under. No one heard her cries. No one was there to help. No one, except the black janitor's son, a boy the world never expected to be a hero. What happened next would not only save a life, but uncover a truth about race, privilege, and courage that no one could ignore. It was a summer morning like any other in the quiet suburbs, where wealth spoke through marble driveways, sprawling gardens, and shimmering blue pools. In one of the grandest houses lived Emily, the millionaire's daughter. To outsiders, her life looked perfect: designer dresses, private tutors, and every comfort imaginable. But beneath the surface was a quiet struggle. Emily had been born with a disability that made her movements slower, her balance weaker. While other children raced through the yard, she often watched from the sidelines, her world framed by caution and limitation. Her parents tried to protect her with luxury and control, but protection has its cracks. For all the money, all the walls around her, there was one truth they couldn't buy their way out of: Emily was vulnerable. And that vulnerability, on a day that seemed perfectly ordinary, would become the opening to a nightmare, one no one saw coming. The mansion looked peaceful that afternoon, its towering glass windows reflecting the golden summer sun. But inside, Emily's life felt smaller than the space around her. Her disability meant she was always supervised: nannies, tutors, even security guards keeping watch. Her father believed money could shield her from every danger, yet ironically, those who hovered over her weren't there when it mattered most. That day, the house was quieter than usual. Her parents were away at a charity luncheon, the staff distracted by preparations for an evening party. Emily, restless and curious, wandered toward the backyard pool. To her, the pool was both a promise and a threat, a place of shimmering beauty that she had been warned about her whole life. She had never been allowed near it alone. But now, with no one watching, temptation pulled her closer. Not far away, another child was spending his afternoon in a very different world. Marcus, the janitor's son, had grown up on the edges of this wealthy neighborhood. His father, James, worked tirelessly in the mansion, fixing leaks, scrubbing floors, keeping every corner pristine for people who never bothered to look him in the eye. To the millionaire's family, James was invisible, a shadow who blended into the background of their wealth. And Marcus? He was just the janitor's boy. A label whispered by neighbors, dismissed by teachers, and sneered at by kids his age. He was smart, brave, and kind, but the world rarely cared to see it. Racism had taught him early. Sometimes, your worth isn't measured by who you are, but by the color of your skin. That afternoon, while James finished chores inside the mansion, Marcus wandered into the yard. He knew better than to be seen. This wasn't his space, after all, but curiosity often pushed him to the edges. From behind a hedge, he caught sight of Emily at the pool. She looked fragile, leaning on the railing as though unsure of herself. He hesitated, debating whether to leave before anyone accused him of trespassing. But something in her unsteady steps froze him in place. Then, it happened. Emily slipped. Her body hit the water with a splash too small for anyone inside to notice. Panic spread across her face as she struggled to keep her head above the surface. Her disability made swimming impossible, every movement dragged her deeper. The bright blue water, so inviting a moment before, became a silent trap. Marcus's heart pounded. He glanced toward the house. No one came. No one even looked. Time slowed as he realized he was the only one who saw her drowning. But what would happen if he ran to help? He knew how the wealthy family saw him, how society saw him. A black boy, near the daughter of a millionaire, in a situation no one would believe. If something went wrong, if she didn't survive, they would blame him. They always blamed boys like him. His feet felt cemented to the ground. Fear and instinct fought inside him. He had learned from stories in his community, from the news, from whispers passed down like warnings. Sometimes being a hero didn't save you, it destroyed you. But then Emily's small hand disappeared beneath the surface. Her struggle grew weaker. And Marcus knew, if he did nothing, she would die. With a burst of courage, he sprinted toward the pool, diving in without hesitation. The water swallowed him, cold and heavy. He reached her, wrapping his arm firmly around her waist, pulling her up with every ounce of strength. She coughed and gasped as he lifted her head above water. He kicked hard, dragging her toward the edge until, with one final push, he hoisted her onto the tiles. Emily lay there, choking and crying, but alive. For a brief moment, relief washed over Marcus. He had done it. He had saved her. A smile flickered across his face as Emily's eyes fluttered open, dazed but breathing. But before he could catch his breath, voices erupted from the house. The staff had noticed the commotion. A housekeeper screamed. A security guard ran toward the pool. And in an instant, the scene twisted. Instead of gratitude, Marcus was met with suspicion. The guard's eyes narrowed, his hand reaching for his radio. "What are you doing here?" the man barked. His voice wasn't relief, it was accusation. Emily was still coughing, her wet hair clinging to her face, but Marcus barely heard her soft sobs over the sharp words cutting through the air. He tried to speak, to explain, but the guard's glare was unrelenting. To him, the picture was simple, a black boy, soaking wet, standing over the millionaire's vulnerable daughter. And in a world built on prejudice, the truth didn't matter. The guard grabbed his arm roughly, yanking him away from Emily. Marcus struggled, trying to point back to the pool, to the girl whose life he had just saved. But the shouts drowned out his voice. Staff gathered, whispering, eyes darting. And with every second, the story twisted further away from the truth. By the time Emily's father arrived home, the air was thick with half-spoken accusations. He saw his daughter trembling, drenched, surrounded by chaos, and then he saw Marcus, held tightly by security as though he were a criminal. The father's face hardened. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen. In his eyes, money and power meant his version of events was the only one that mattered. And the image before him told a story he was ready to believe, his disabled daughter, nearly drowned, and the janitor's black son at the center of it all. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the father raised his hand to silence him. The boy who had just risked his life to save another's now stood accused of endangering her. The tension spiraled, thick with injustice. Marcus's heart hammered, knowing that in this world, people like him rarely got the chance to prove themselves innocent. The truth was fragile, easily drowned out by prejudice. And in that moment, as the father's cold stare bore into him, Marcus realized, his battle wasn't just about saving Emily's life anymore. It was about saving his own. The pool was calm again, but nothing else was. Emily shivered in silence, the only witness to what truly happened. And yet, in a house ruled by wealth and power, whose voice would be heard? The air around the pool grew heavier with every passing second. Emily's breaths were shallow, her frail body wrapped in a towel, but the fear in her eyes wasn't from nearly drowning. It was from the storm now unfolding around her. Marcus stood drenched, shivering, not from the cold, but from the weight of the accusations closing in on him. The millionaire's father, Mr. Whitmore, towered above him, his voice sharp and laced with fury. "What were you doing here?" he barked, each word spat like venom. "Why were you near my daughter?" Marcus opened his mouth, his voice trembling but steady enough. "She fell in. I saved her." But the words fell flat. The staff avoided his gaze, whispering behind hands. The security guard tightened his grip on Marcus's arm. And Mr. Whitmore's face remained unreadable, carved in stone. To him, Marcus's skin color had already written the story. A poor black boy, caught at the side of his vulnerable, disabled daughter. A danger. A threat. Not a hero. Emily tried to speak, her small voice cracking through the silence. He helped me." But her words were drowned out by the adults' louder voices. "Quiet, Emily," her father snapped, his anger masked as protection. "You don't understand what could have happened here." The truth was struggling to breathe, just like Emily had in the water moments before. Inside the mansion, the accusations grew. The police were called. Marcus's father, James, rushed in, panic etched across his face. Seeing his son held like a criminal shattered him, but he knew better than to shout, better than to resist. He had seen too many men destroyed for less. "Please," James pleaded, his voice low, steady, desperate. "My boy saved her. Ask her. Ask anyone." But the police didn't ask. Their eyes flicked between Mr. Whitmore, wealthy, influential, untouchable, and James, the janitor. To them, the story had already been decided. They tightened their hold on Marcus, treating him not as a rescuer, but as a suspect. "Step back," one officer warned James. "We'll handle this. Handle this." Those two words twisted like a knife. Because James knew exactly what they meant. Injustice handled behind closed doors. Accusations handled without truth. Lives handled without mercy. The crowd outside the mansion grew. Neighbors gathered at the gates, curious whispers spreading. A black boy, caught at the pool of the Whitmore estate? It didn't take long for rumors to weave their own versions of the story. Some said he had pushed Emily in. Others said he had been trespassing, looking for trouble. The truth, his bravery, his sacrifice, was fading fast, swallowed by prejudice. And Marcus, only 13, stood in the center of it all, his body shaking as officers questioned him. "Why were you here? Did you touch her before she fell? Were you trying to take something?" Each question wasn't a search for truth, it was a trap. A reminder that no matter how he answered, they had already decided he was guilty. Tears blurred his vision, but he refused to break. He thought of Emily's face under the water, the way her body had gone limp. He thought of how close she had come to death. And he thought, "I did the right thing. Why does it feel like the world is punishing me for it?" Then came the breaking point. Mr. Whitmore demanded Marcus be taken away. "I won't have my daughter endangered in her own home. I don't care what excuse he has." His voice thundered through the halls. James stepped forward, his hands trembling, his heart racing. "Please, sir. You're wrong. My son saved her life. Without him, she wouldn't be here right now." For a flicker of a second, Emily's eyes met Marcus's. Her lips parted as though she might speak, but her father's hand pressed her shoulder, silencing her. Wealth had built walls around her voice too. The officers moved closer, handcuffs glinting in the afternoon sun. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the noise around him. He had seen this scene before, not in his life, but on the news, in stories told at church, in the eyes of his community. Innocent boys taken away. Lives ruined before they began. And now it was happening to him. James could no longer hold back. He stepped in front of his son, his voice breaking with urgency. "If you take him," he said, his chest heaving, "you're not just punishing an innocent boy. You're punishing the only person who had the courage to act when no one else did. While everyone else stood inside, my son dove into that water and saved a little girl's life. And this is how you repay him." The room fell into uneasy silence. Even the officers paused. But Mr. Whitmore's expression remained unmoved, hardened by pride and prejudice. "Enough," he said coldly. "Take him." Marcus felt the cold metal of the cuffs close around his wrists. He winced, not from pain, but from the crushing weight of injustice. His chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. His father's voice echoed in his ears, but the officer's hands dragged him forward. In that moment, the world blurred. Faces stared. Whispers grew louder. Emily's muffled sobs filled the air. And Marcus thought, is this how heroes are treated? The climax reached its sharpest edge as Marcus was led toward the waiting police car outside. The crowd had doubled, their eyes wide with curiosity, judgment, fear. Phones came out, recording. Some shook their heads in disgust, believing the rumors. Others looked away, too uncomfortable to confront the truth. James followed, shouting, begging, but restrained by guards. Emily reached out from the doorway, her voice cracking as she cried, "Stop. Please. He saved me." But her words, though true, were lost in the chaos. Few believed her. Fewer wanted to. Because in this world, the truth often bends beneath the weight of power and prejudice. The door of the police car opened. Marcus felt himself pushed forward. And as he looked back one last time, his eyes locked on Emily's. Her face was pale, her body trembling. She knew. He knew. But the world? The world was about to decide what it wanted to believe. And in that razor's edge moment, with the door about to close on him, Marcus realized something life-altering. This wasn't just about saving Emily anymore. It was about exposing a truth far bigger than both of them. A truth that could no longer be ignored. The door slammed shut. The sirens wailed. And as the car pulled away, one question hung in the air like smoke. Would the truth finally be heard, or would another innocent black boy disappear into silence? The police car rolled through the gates, sirens echoing in the wealthy neighborhood like a warning. Inside, Marcus sat in silence, his small wrists bound in cold steel. He stared at the floor, his thoughts tangled with fear. Would anyone believe him? Would the truth even matter? But then, something shifted. One of the recordings taken by a neighbor began spreading. A shaky phone video captured the moment Marcus dragged Emily from the water, lifting her onto the tiles before collapsing in exhaustion. The evidence was undeniable. He hadn't harmed her. He had saved her. Within hours, the whispers outside the mansion turned into questions. Why had he been treated like a criminal? Why had no one listened to Emily's cries in his defense? Why was a black child nearly punished for being a hero? The police released him before the night was over. But freedom didn't feel like justice. The memory of the cuffs, the stares, the way the world had been ready to condemn him, it carved scars deeper than the water he had dived into. Emily's voice finally broke through the noise. In interviews and in court, she told the truth again and again. Marcus saved my life. Her words carried weight, but not enough to erase the pain of how close the world had come to destroying him. For Marcus and his father, the impact lingered. Every glance, every hushed conversation, reminded them that the neighborhood still saw them differently. Marcus was no longer invisible, but not because they had finally recognized his humanity. He was known because he had almost become another statistic. And yet, his story rippled beyond the mansion walls. The video of his rescue went viral, sparking outrage, conversations, and uncomfortable questions. Why had a child's skin color determined whether people saw him as a threat or a hero? Why does privilege silence truth until evidence forces it into the light? Marcus didn't ask to be a symbol, but his story became one. A reminder of how easily racism twists perception. How quickly an innocent life can be placed on trial without cause. And how courage often comes from those the world least expects. For Emily, the near-death experience changed everything. She began to see not just her own vulnerability, but the vulnerability of those society pushes aside. Her gratitude turned into advocacy, her voice speaking where Marcus's had been silenced. But the larger truth remains, Marcus's story is not unique. Across neighborhoods, across cities, across nations, countless others faced the same injustice. Their heroism overlooked. Their innocence doubted. Their lives devalued simply because of the color of their skin. And that is the haunting reality this story leaves behind. Marcus should be remembered for his bravery, not for the chains that nearly defined him. So the question isn't whether Marcus was a hero. We know he was. The real question is this: how many more heroes will be shackled before we finally confront the bias that blinds us? How many more children must carry scars from battles they should never have to fight? Because until the world learns to see past skin and status, stories like Marcus's will keep repeating. And each time, the cost will be measured in lives broken, truths ignored, and justice delayed. This was not just Marcus's story. It is America's story. It is the world's story. And the only question left is, will we listen this time?